The next piece I really wanted to do was this casting, the main wheel head casting. However, to bore that out I need to have a finished spindle, or at least the spindle body. So that's going to have to be shelved until I've finished the spindle. The spindle is a fairly complicated affair. There's a few things you need to pay particular attention to. There's recesses for the ball bearings here and here, and it's important they are perfectly in line, concentric, parallel, because if they ain't right then the spindle ain't going to spin proper. And the spindle shaft is made out of high tensile steel, so again this needs to be true, especially over the areas where the ball bearings run. This dimension has got to be 12.997 to 13.005 millimeters. Now that is way beyond my machining tolerances, so it's going to have to come down close and then be lapped down. Anyway, the first part I'm going to tackle is the spindle. Let's turn the drawing upside down and have one without my scribbles on it. My plan of attack for the spindle is to put this end in a 3-jaw chuck, centre in this end, and then I can turn this diameter down to 13 millimeters, near enough. This end is going to be fabricated. This is the suggested fabrication method. So rather than try to machine a deep groove there, you machine a recess there and a collar, and that collar is loctited over there to fabricate the deep groove. That seems a far more sensible solution to me. Anyway, after I've machined the 30mm diameter and probably cut this thread, which is knob thread, I'll turn these features. Then I will spin the spindle round. I shall put it in a collet chuck held here because it's 13mm. I'll go in a collet chuck and down the throat of my lathe. Then I shall finish off these features and drill the hole all the way down. There's a 5-inch deep hole, which is challenging because I've only got 1.5 inch travel on my tailstock quill, but I have got some long series drills and that'll end up being reamed. I've got a long series 5/16 reamer, so we shall have to see how we get on with that one. I'm sure it'll be fine. That's only for a drawbar, so it's not super critical, and this taper is the locating bit for the wheel arbors. That needs to be absolutely accurate. So the build notes say complete the spindle assembly, hold the spindle in your lathe, hold the spindle body in a steady, tighten down so the spindle body can't actually spin, and then you turn this with the spindle running on its own bearings. And that, they say, is the only way to get this taper truly accurate. And obviously it's important that is absolutely accurate. So that'll be done later. This looks like one of the most difficult parts on the whole machine. Wish me luck. That's set up in the 3-jaw chuck now. I clocked that and it was running within 2 to 3 thou out, which is close enough because everything is going to be machined on here. And I've clocked this end and that's running about 2 thou out. So again, not super critical, but it needs to be pretty close so this doesn't try to walk out of the chuck. So now I can face off this end and put a centre in it. It'll be a fairly deep centre because I want plenty of support there. That's faced off. Now to put the centre in it. That will do. Right, the first feature I'm going to machine is this face here. I can't do this one because half of it's in the chuck. So to show here, that face is in the chuck, but I can get to this face. So I shall machine down to here. Then after I've done that, I shall carry on down and do this diameter here. Well, it didn't like that. Let's try a smaller cut. Alright, so 5,000 cuts it is, and it looks like it'd be happier with a bit of cutting oil as well. Surface finish is okay. It's going to need a little bit of fettling. It's going to need a little bit of polishing, but it's not too bad. Right, this is going to take an age, so I'm going to bring you back when I'm nearly finished. I've just got 7,000 left to take off, which hopefully will be the last cut. After trying various feeds and speeds, I found I got the best finish, and that's actually quite a good surface finish with the lathe on its lowest speed, which is 100 RPM, and the slowest feed, and 5,000 depth of cut. So that took absolutely ages. Cutting fluid helps as well. And that should be it. Don't think I mentioned, but this shaft is made out of high tensile steel, and it seems to be quite a lot tougher than normal steel. My lathe wasn't terribly impressed with it. That's come out at 1.5 thou oversize. I'll just take that down with a bit of emery paper just to clean up the surface finish. and that's 4/10 of a thou over. I can live with that. That's far more accurate than I normally get. Right, the next job is just to clean up this face. I left it about 3 thou shy, so there's just 3 thou to clean up and take off the machining marks. Yeah, that will do nicely. On the finished shaft we need a thread at this end, which is 0.512 by 32 TPI. I mean, it's a random thread, but it fits the shaft. I've never had a great deal of success with single point cutting threads, and I've obviously never tried single point cutting a thread in this material before, so I'm going to have a practice on this dimension before I need to turn it down to its final 13mm. That way if I screw it up, it doesn't matter, I can just turn it off and have another go. I'm going to start by putting the top slide over by 30 degrees. Setting this reasonably accurately using a clock and the dials on the hand wheel. If I move the cross slide in by 100 thou, the clock should move 50 thou. When you do this, it's important to make sure the clock is level and straight, otherwise you're going to end up with cosine errors. Now I've used the screw cutting gauge to make sure that the lathe tool is square onto the shaft. I've set the change wheels for threading, which is always a widescreen epic, probably because I don't do it very often. And that's my scratch pass, and checked with the thread gauge to make sure I got the pitch correct. Amazingly, I got it right first time for once. So let's see how it goes. That looks like it's given quite a nice thread, so I'm quite happy with that. So now, bolstered with confidence, I can now turn this diameter, get the bearing journals right, and then turn this thread for real. Of course, now I've got to put all the change wheels back. Hopefully it'll be easier to put back than it was to get set up for threading. Next task is to turn this down to 13mm plus or minus next to nothing. Now again, this is going to take an awful long time, so I shall turn the camera off and bring you back when it's down to almost size. Okay, there's 7th thou left to take off. Now I'm just going to do a spring pass to find out how much spring pass it's going to take off, because I really don't want to bloat this dimension. I've got a very nice surface finish now. No, it's showing 6 thou to go, so that took off 1 thou. Well, half a thou really. I shall carry on taking it down 1 thou at a time, which is actually 2 thou off the diameter, until it's down close enough that I can take it down with the file and emery paper and maybe a oilstone. And I'll bring you back when I'm down to very close. What I have done is marked the position of the bearing journals on a ruler, bit Sharpie. The diameter is only really critical at the bearing journals, and the instructions actually suggest reducing it here slightly so that you can just slide the bearing up here without having to tap it all the way. So of course that also means I can turn this first little bit and measure it, and if I've overshot the dimension here, it doesn't matter because I still haven't got to the critical bit. That's actually showing 2 thou to go, so I shall carry on. Right, a couple more passes, taking the barest whisker off here, and that's down to about 1.5 thou to come off, which I'll take off with hand tools. I've just left a few thou to come off this face to clean up this face. That looks nice. Now we're coming down to the last bit of hand finishing. I've marked the position of the bearing journals on a ruler in Sharpie, just to make it easy, and I've transferred those to the bar. Obviously they don't stay there very long, but it gives me a visual reference to where the lands are, where I need to focus on. I'm doing this one first. That's measuring 13.028 and I'm aiming for 13.000. So there's just over 1 thou to come off. So I'm doing this with emery paper. That was 80 grit to take the material off, and then I give it a quick go with 240 grit to smooth down the finish. .02. I'm going to turn the camera off there because it's very boring. It's going to take me a long time. When I've got both bearing journals down to the correct diameter, I'll come back. Well, after a bit more polishing, that's now coming out at 12.998. Which is towards the bottom end of the tolerance, but still well within tolerance. If you can count 0.001 of a millimetre well within. And the bearing is slipping on and tightening up there. So it's a slip fit up to there. From there onwards it's going to be a push fit. So I'm in two minds whether to take it down a smidge more so that it's a slightly easier press fit, or whether to leave it like that. I'm not going to press it on any further because then it'll be difficult to get off. This one's done now. That's come out at 12.998. So I think I shall leave it there. Did have one minor problem, is that the very corner, the emery paper wasn't taking it down very smoothly. So I went in there with a needle file and just took the little corner out with a needle file, and it now seems to measure okay. There's a slight chamfer on the bearings, but I wasn't sure how far it was. I wanted to get it as good as I could. Now that does leave me with the conundrum of, do I leave it at 12.998 and have to tap the bearings in, or do I take it down a smidge further? While I'm thinking about that, I'm going to relieve this area and this area. So that's a few thou undersize, so the bearings will slide over that easily. There's no point in trying to tap bearings all the way along there and all the way along there when you don't have to. So I don't open the door when Mr. Cock-up knocks, I've coloured the bearing journals red and I've coloured the bits to be relieved in green. And I'm aiming just to take about a thou off. That's reading point 12946, which is near enough. Okay, that's given me a reading of about 12.999. So that's not taken quite enough off, so I shall take another thou. Yeah, I can feel a light ridge there now. Yeah, that's 12.956. 12.957. 12.959, and finally 12.94. In the middle for good luck, 12.96. I think what I shall do is I shall just go over these with my finest slipstone, which is a 240 grit, just to smooth up the surface finish a little bit. That shouldn't take anything off the diameter, but it should just make it a bit smoother, and hopefully the bearings will slide over a little bit easier. Well, that's taken off less than thickness of the Sharpie, or to be more accurate, less than thickness of the machining marks, but it feels very smooth. And the readings haven't changed at all. Firstly, a huge thanks and shout out to Stuart at Stuart's Shedanigans. I won that nice micrometer on his channel giveaway, and without that I wouldn't have stood a chance of getting the bearing journals anywhere near as accurate as I have done. So thanks Stuart, that has been a really useful prize. That seems like a good stopping point for this video. It's about half an hour long, which is long enough for a single video. Still a fair amount of work to do on the spindle, and that will be completed in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, leave them below. I read them all and I answer nearly all of them. Thank you. See you soon.